Today's episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast is brought to you by Poor Richard's Cafe and Star Local Media. Poor Richard's Cafe, Plano's oldest restaurant since 1973. They are open daily from 5:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., serving the three most important meals of the day: breakfast, lunch, and dessert. It is true Texas home-style cooking made with love and grit. That is Poor Richard's Cafe, located off of Avenue K in Plano. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. The dynamic duo, we're back.
Yeah, we lied a little bit. We thought Matt Welch would be on both editions this week, but he's out doing the good work and taking some volleyball photos and covering some preseason stuff over there. So here we are. We're back.
After last week, I don't think we need an introduction. I'm just kidding. That's Taylor Raglin. I'm Bryan Murphy. We're sticking with another 5A district. I believe it's our last 5A district of our podcast high school football district preview series, whatever you want to call it.
Gridiron?
I guess so. Yeah, there you go. That would have been a lot easier to say. And last but certainly not least is District 7 5A Division 2. It has a bunch of teams that we cover. I believe 6 out of the 9 we cover. 4 Frisco schools: the New Kids, Lebanon Trail, Memorial, the original high school in Frisco High, and Reedy, and then also Lovejoy and Lake Dallas, which is more of your jurisdiction.
Yep.
And then we have Princeton, Braswell, and Denison.
Denison. Yeah, there you go. You're almost there. I was going to help you out.
Okay, Denison. All right. So, where do we want to begin here? They're the top teams from the district a year ago, or 3 of the 4 playoff teams. They have, some fresh faces, primarily at quarterback. We can dive into one of your teams. Either Lovejoy or Lake Dallas.
I guess the first thing I'd say is that you mentioned kind of. Last but not least with this 5A district, is we both cover 9-6A, right? So, 9-6A is the most exciting district we cover. It's the most high profile. It's Allen. It's the Plano schools. Yeah. It's very exciting, and it should especially be this season. We'll get into that next week. But outside of that district, I'm easily most excited about 7-5A Division 2 and how this is all going to shake out, because like you mentioned, a lot of turnover, especially at quarterback. Guys like Ryan Deppersmith at Lake Dallas are gone. Foskey's gone at Reedy. Carson Collins is gone from Lovejoy. New head coach at Frisco. A little bit steady as she goes, as Frisco normally is, but still some intrigue there. A lot happening in this district. I guess we can start with Lake Dallas, because I think the Falcons really kind of embody that turnover and that sense of newness and trying to figure out what kind of their new identity is going to be, because like I mentioned, Ryan Deppersmith's gone, and he's the big name, and the quarterback position is the sexy one to talk about as far as who's coming back, who's leaving, who's going to be QB1 for any given team, and Ryan Deppersmith was no exception. He was outstanding, dual threat, carried that offense, made the whole thing go during his time as starter. And he's gone, and they really don't have a quarterback option that has been groomed to take over this position. They
have a stud though.
They have they have a stud athlete. There you go. That's the key word, because Brandon Engel is going to be the key to everything Lake Dallas does on offense this season. I went out there and saw them practice last week. He's a big kid for his size. He's cut up. He looks the part. Tremendously athletic. Throwing the football around looked fantastic. I don't think I saw him miss a throw when I was out there.
I remember I saw your tweet, and he had a cut-off shirt. I'm like, this kid's in high school?
He's a big kid, man.
He looked like a 25-year-old.
He's a big kid for his size, for sure. But athlete is the operative word there for him. He was the leading receiver last season. Really, just the best athlete, arguably, on Lake Dallas with the ball in his hands. So, head coach Michael Young admitted he's the best quarterback on the roster. He's the best option, but at the same time, is there a scenario where they have him line up out wide sometimes simply because he's such a threat out there that things can be built off of that. Trevor Moon, a junior, Michael Young's kind of liked the way he's looked under center, but he's not Engel. So I guess the question that they really have to figure out in scrimmages and in non-district play is what's the right mix of lining Engel up at quarterback, because who touches the football in every offensive play the quarterback does. So if the logic is sound, if you want to get the ball in Brandon Engel's hands, as many times as you possibly can in a game, then just have him start with the football and figure it out from there, because he's your best athlete. But at the same time, they don't want to be too one-dimensional, so there's a chance that Trevor Moon plays, some series here and there, or some plays in different situations. Engel goes out wide, even if it's set up the run game, or even if it's to set up just different looks and keep defenses honest almost. How much they'll actually utilize it, I guess, remains to be seen, but the threat has to be there of him lining up back out wide and being a threat out that way. So, yeah, other than Engel, the story, I guess, Kobe Minor, comes back on defense, Texas Tech commit. He'll be in the secondary leading the way. They're pretty confident in their defensive line. A lot of guys up front on defense that weren't necessarily starters, maybe a couple off and on starts, spot starts, but they had a pretty heavy rotation. So it's one of those cases where, quote unquote starters, maybe not, but they saw significant action and reps. So they feel pretty good about the defensive front. Linebackers and secondary, kind of up in the air outside of Kobe Minor, but, I'm sure they'll fill holes. And then Engel is the show on offense. So, they got a chip on their shoulder. Even head coach Michael Young explained it's a weird position for Lake Dallas to be in, because they're used to being a contender. They're used to being picked pretty highly. They're used to finishing, highly, maybe going a couple rounds deep in the postseason. Obviously it wasn't the case last year, tough first round matchup, but it's kind of been the norm around there.
Who did they face last year in the playoffs?
Corsicana. Yeah, so it's a new but exciting, I think, for Michael Young opportunity, because there is no pressure, really. He feels confident in the group he's got. They're obviously very confident. That was kind of the first thing out of Engel's mouth when I talked to him at practice was, they know what they've got. They're confident internally. They're not really worried about, people picking them 5th, 6th, 7th in the district. So we'll see. I mean, it remains to be seen. There's a lot that has to be replaced there. I think that Engel is the type of game-breaking athlete that can cover up a lot of stuff every once in a while. So if they can get that defense in shape, I mean, they got a chance to hang around. But it's going to be an interesting year for Lake Dallas for sure. And like I said, it's all going to. They do bring back. I should mention Ike Onyekwere at running back, big bruiser, going to carry the football a lot. They got depth underneath him, which is it's kind of counterintuitive, but you need depth to be able to give one guy 25 carries a game, because you can't give him 25 carries a game back to back to back to back. So
unless
they feel,
you're Zeke.
Yeah, sure. But they feel confident in the guys underneath him and his ability to have 25, 30 carries, even if it comes to that. But it's all going to start and end with Engel. So we'll see.
Dave Campbell's has Lake Dallas pegged to finish 6th.
Yeah. Is
that realistic for them? Where do you kind of see them shaking out?
They're one of those teams that arguably has the biggest range in the district. If Engel is as advertised and really settles in, and they can find some pieces around him, they can find some guys to fill in the secondary and have successful years kind of behind that defensive front. Because in high school it starts on the defensive front. Your secondary can make plays off of your defensive front if they're getting to the quarterback, if they're applying pressure, if they're creating chaos, even just kind of within the box. So if everything comes together and they kind of get on a roll and use that chip on their shoulder to their advantage, they could easily make the postseason. Yeah. If they don't, if Engel's kind of out on an island and has no help and they never really kind of find their rhythm offensively and the secondary doesn't shape up, then they could miss the postseason. They could finish as low as 6th. I don't know. I don't know if I would take them as low as 6th right now, but it wouldn't shock me either. So I mean, their range of kind of potential outcomes may be the biggest in the district.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've seen some outlets like Dave Campbell's picking teams like Braswell to finish even above them.
Michael Young said, that he expects them to be much improved.
Braswell?
So, yeah, I mean, obviously we don't cover them.
Yeah,
I don't know
never
a whole
seen
lot
them
about
play.
them.
Yeah, I didn't even think about watching them play last year. They finished, just barely above the 2 Frisco schools.
Right.
But a team that Lake Dallas is going to have to beat out to make the playoffs for sure is the original school in Frisco, Frisco High, a team that caught everyone by surprise last year, myself included. After they went 0-10 the year before, they bounced back with 6 wins, make the playoffs. They beat Lovejoy, they beat Lake Dallas, and that was kind of their coming out party in those wins there. And the thing with them is they return a lot of their defensive players 9 guys come back on that defense. They return a lot of their skill position guys, but they graduated their entire offensive line.
Yeah.
And that's critical for what they run with that wing T. Just because they have a new head coach in Jeff Harbert, with Vance Gibson gone, coaching in college now, Jeff Harbert, he's been there the last decade.
Yeah.
If anything, they might be, they're still going to do that wing T, but they might be a little more dynamic. Harbert told me at the beginning of summer that you might see them throw the ball a little bit more. You might see them kind of air it out and kind of spread things out, but that's still going to be the same Frisco offense. And this Frisco High team is coming off an appearance at the state 7-on-7 tournament for the first time ever. That says a lot about their skill position guys like Blake May and Bryson Clemens, and they got a transfer from Prestonwood and Chase Lowry, I should say, and then they have Dante Reese. A lot of these guys playing both sides of the ball. They have lots of athletes. People are picking them to make the playoffs again. I think they'll be in that mix.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll finish as high as third or the top 3 like they did last year.
Yeah.
But I expect them to be in the mix, and so that'll be one of the biggest tests for a team like Lake Dallas, a team like Braswell, teams that are possibly going to be on the outside looking in when this is all said and done. But Lovejoy, they lose their quarterback, but they're still expected to be right there, are they not?
Yeah, I think so. You talk about kind of potential ranges. Lake Dallas, I could see anywhere from 3 to 6. Frisco, I think, is a little smaller, probably somewhere 4 or 5, maybe 3 if they jump up and upset a couple people. But Lovejoy, as far as external expectations, it's they're supposed to be, the leverage is supposed to be right underneath Frisco Reedy as far as kind of the best team in the district, the one that may challenge them a little bit, continuing a little momentum from the postseason last year. No shame in losing to who Lovejoy lost to in Aledo. I mean, that's the way it goes. But
everyone lost to Aledo, literally.
It's kind of similar to Lake Dallas in the fact that they lose a quarterback in Carson Collins, who multi-year starter, just really solid, very mature, I guess, is the way I would describe him. He was a very mature quarterback in the way he handled that offense and kind of managed the offense, but also very talented. Not quite as much as maybe a running threat as a guy like Ryan Depperschmidt was, but very talented and like I said, very good at running that offense. And they kind of go the way of Lake Dallas in bringing back Ralph Rucker, who was an all-district safety a year ago, I think second team as a sophomore, will be a junior. And he's going to get the nod under center, and it's a similar story to Engel in that he's an athlete. He's just a multi-sport athlete, star on the baseball team, has played on the baseball team since his freshman year.
That's where I know the name.
Yeah, star wrestler. I think he was 6th maybe at the state tournament in wrestling last. I mean, he's just the prototypical multi-sport, talented kind of across the board guy, and he's going to be called upon to lead that offense, and I think he's going to do a good job of it just because he's got the body type. He's very versatile. Athletic enough to run the football a little bit, pretty good arm talent, obviously, and there was a semi-competition, I guess, a pseudo-competition, but he's going to be the guy. He led him to the 7-on-7 state tournament. They qualified, I think, in their first SQT this summer. And Lovejoy is one of those schools that's really known for replenishing the cupboard, I guess, is kind of how head coach Tuff Ford likes to put it. Out wide, especially. They lose guys like Bo Ivanelli and Jacob Terwilliger and some other ones, but they replenish very well out wide as far as just kind of always being a pretty good wide receiver school. I expect them to be really good on offense. Again, I expect them to be pretty high powered. Kind of a running back by committee, but I think that'll be fine with Rucker especially. And then on defense, kind of steady as she goes. They bring back a couple guys. They have another linebacker leader. And Austin King, I believe is his name. Sorry if that's wrong. I believe that's his name. Takes over for Coleman Christensen, who took over for, none of these guys are Bumper Pool from a couple years ago. That guy was a special talent. But it's kind of been like this revolving door of, a linebacker really becoming the quarterback of the Lovejoy defense. And it's going to be the same thing this year with Austin King. Sean Sumners is back. Quinn McDermott is back. And another interesting kind of wrinkle with Lovejoy is that Tyler Liu has a boot, and you don't often talk about kickers, in high school and kind of their impact on the game. But when you have a good one, you have one that is a threat from, legitimate distances and is pretty accurate and has a boot, like I said, where you feel like you kind of have that in your back pocket. That's a unique wrinkle for a high school team and a high school offense, and it can definitely, change some games and give them another dimension. So, it's weird to say that, Lovejoy is probably just as unproven as a lot of these teams, but they're expected to be better. They're expected to kind of roll with the momentum that they built up, and I think they will. I think that they just have the athletes. I think Rucker is the real deal. I think he'll be good for, the rest of his career, obviously just a junior. So, yeah, I kind of have them in that group of fighting for the second or third seed under Frisco Reedy.
Dude, Bumper Pool is so good. I saw him play against Wakeland 2 years ago, and then last year, the only time I saw Arkansas play was when they played my alma mater, North Texas. Yeah. And I think I heard Bumper Pool's name like 4 or 5 times. And I think
great name too. I mean, he just destined to be a stud middle linebacker. Yeah.
All right, so you kind of alluded to that team that's kind of expected to lead the way. We'll get to them and the rest of Frisco and the rest of the district. Princeton, Denison. Denison has an MVP candidate of their own at running back, and he's really young. We'll get to the rest of those teams after a word from this sponsor.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Star Local Media. 14 newspapers and websites with a print distribution of 270,000 homes and monthly page views of 600,000 online. Star Local Media, your community voice for news. And now, let's get back to the podcast.
All right, and we are back to round out our final Gridiron 5A podcast of the preseason, I should say. Denison and Princeton. You saw Denison play last year. I didn't see neither one of these teams play. Princeton was making the move up from 4A a year ago. Denison, they have, what some people might say is the best player in the district, at least offensively, potentially. Jadarian Price, 4-star kid, newcomer of the year last year in the district as a freshman. He's got offers from everybody. Dave Campbell's has him, pegged to be, the preseason offensive MVP. This is a guy to watch. He hasn't even stepped foot on the field as a sophomore. Denison, they bring back a whopping 15 starters, 7 on offense, 8 on defense. From what you saw last year, could this be a team that could be, battling with Lovejoy, maybe even give Reedy a game?
I don't think so. I don't know if they're
tell me how you really
I don't know if they're quite in that Reedy tier unless Reedy takes a significant step backward.
What about Lovejoy, though?
I think possibly, with Lovejoy. I think Denison is certainly, in my mind, Denison is a playoff team. Having seen them once last year, the thing that really struck me was young, number one, led obviously by Price, but fast as well, led by Price again, but just kind of overall, they impressed me with their athleticism and their speed. I think they only get better. Like you said, they bring back, I think, 15 starters. So, a lot of those guys coming back. I think they're a postseason team. I think there's a chance that, outside of Reedy, which also loses a lot, but, fills in some holes. We'll get to that in a minute. It's kind of muddled. Everybody, I think, has kind of pegged Lovejoy as that team to beat for the number 2 seed, but Denison is right up there. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Like I said, I have them as a postseason team. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see them, really take a step forward, maybe finish 3rd. I think that's what Dave Campbell's had them as. That could be entirely possible. Win that 4th seed if that's not the case. But yeah, Jadarian Price is the real deal. Obviously, he's a game breaker. He's going to be tremendously impactful. But yeah, there's a lot there other than him as well. So I think they take a major step forward and contend for a postseason spot. Princeton, I don't know. Princeton is kind of in a similar boat, but like you mentioned, had to jump up classifications. I think that they'll be about like they were last year. Competitive in a lot of games.
5 to 7.
Yeah, in
district range,
in a lot of games. chance to knock off some teams.
Yeah.
A team that you definitely can't take lightly. I don't know if they're a postseason team. I definitely don't think they're in that upper tier of teams for sure. But a team that can sneak up on you and surprise you, and that you need to take lightly, especially if you have to go there. That was kind of, Lake Dallas went to Princeton last year, and that was one of the tougher asks, I think, of their district schedule last year, and I think it's going to be a similar scenario. I don't think that they're going to blow anybody away. I don't think that they're going to take the kind of step that I see Denison taking. But yeah, competitive. Unlike maybe the two younger programs, I guess, that are still kind of on the up and up a little bit.
Yeah. Denison, they had to play Reedy last year at the beginning of the district season. They put up 20 points against Reedy. Not many teams were doing that. Then they blew out Princeton, and then they played a shootout against Lake Dallas early in the district season, and then they actually beat the brakes out of Frisco. I don't know if that was a matchup problem for Frisco there. They put up 56 points against Frisco, the same Frisco team that beat Lovejoy and Lake Dallas. So a lot of teams beating up on each other. And with Denison expected to make a jump, they only lost by 10 to Lovejoy at the end of the year in the final district game. So, who knows, with a bunch of key guys coming back for Denison, a lot of those games could be turned around. Maybe wins against Lovejoy, maybe wins against Lake Dallas. Next thing you know, you could see Denison being as high as 2 in this district. Could be interesting, a team to really monitor there. You brought up the two Frisco schools that were at the bottom last year, to no surprise. I mean, football is that one sport where you need seniors. You need that age, that experience, that size, that strength. You can get away with it in volleyball like Lebanon Trail did, or a soccer, or in basketball like Memorial did, making the playoffs. And a lot of teams saw success, but in football they really struggled. Blowout after blowout after blowout, which is something we expected. But they bring back every single guy. Every single key guy is back for those two schools. Saw Jackson, the head coach at Lebanon Trail, he gave me a good quote. He said, the movie is called Friday Night Lights for a reason, not Thursday Night Lights. So, them being thrown out in the fire, guys that would have been on the JV teams, on almost any other program, any other 5A program, I should say. They got that varsity experience. Granted, they were getting blown out, and they had to, be taught a hard lesson, and they're going to benefit from that, big time. I'm not saying Lebanon Trail or Memorial is going to, jump up and do a major turnaround like Frisco did last year and win 6 or 7 games overall, but you're not going to see Lebanon Trail go 1-9 again. You're not going to see Memorial go 1-9 again. That. And by the way, that Memorial Lebanon Trail game last year was fantastic, and this year it's going to be even better. Memorial head coach, he was telling me, Derek Roberson, he was saying, man, that might be the game to watch in all of Frisco, really, because Reedy and Lone Star don't play each other, so we don't get that treat. But that will, if we want to dive in, first before we get into games to watch, I could see, a team like Memorial, they have some size, maybe getting a win over a Princeton, getting a win over a Lake Dallas if they're struggling, if they're in a kind of a rebuild year. I wouldn't be surprised if you see a team like Memorial mainly, get a couple of district wins that they didn't get last year, or be more competitive in those games. They're not going to get beat 45-0.
At Bryan Murphy on Twitter.
At Bryan Murphy _.
On Twitter, Lake Dallas. If you want to have some issues with that, we haven't talked about the elephant in the room yet, man.
I know, I'm avoiding it.
Before we move on to games and talking about who we think might be the postseason teams, we got to talk about the team at the top, man. The overrated.
The team that head coach Chad Cole says is overrated heading into the season. They went 13-1 last year, but somehow you're overrated. I get it. They lost a lot of pieces. They only have 6 returning starters in total. You lose Nolan Matthews to Arizona State. You lose 3 of the 3 huge guys on the offensive line. One of the best offensive lines in the state last year, Isaiah Floyd. He's off at Rice. Josh Foskey at quarterback. He's gone. He's off at SFA, and that defensive line, Matthew Hoots, Clay Patterson, those guys that wreaked havoc on the edges, they're gone and graduated. So it's like, all right, well, who's going to step up? Well, it helps when you have the number 1 guard in Texas, in Nate Anderson, who's committed to Oklahoma. It helps when you have a transfer in at quarterback, and Jalen Kitna, who's the son of Cowboys quarterbacks coach John Kitna, longtime former NFL quarterback. He's also committed to Boston College, heading into his junior year, so they'll be okay there. They also have a really good sophomore quarterback, AJ Padgett, who's giving Kitna a run for his money so far early in the fall camp. And then you have the district MVP in Will Harbor, who literally does everything. He led the team in tackles, one of the best linebackers in the area. He's their kicker. He has that big boot, the big capability of kicking a 40-plus yarder. He's huge on kickoffs, because he'll boot a touchback, or he's like an extra awesome tackler, defender, on a kickoff. And then of course he's also their goal line, wildcat, short yardage, whatever you want to call it, quarterback. If Reedy gets the ball within 5 or 4, 3 to 5 yard line in that range, he's going to punch it in. They're so lethal. So when you have that collection of guys, high caliber guys, and Will Harbor had a weight lifted off his shoulders earlier this summer when he committed to Navy. Because if you remember last year, Will Harbor wasn't really getting a whole lot of looks in the recruiting department, I should say, from maybe schools that he was expecting or maybe that he wanted. Because you win the district MVP, you do literally everything. You're a top-notch player in 3 different phases of the game. Not many kids above 3A are really doing that. And then head coach Chad Cole told me there was a big weight lifted off his shoulders. Now he can really focus on what he has to do leading this team, and him and Nate Anderson, they're going to be 2 big time leaders for this team. And Cole can say whatever he wants about them being overrated. I don't see them losing a district game. I know you probably don't see them losing a district game.
I think a lot of it has to do with the composition of the district as well. If you throw this Reedy team against Ryan Depperschmidt or Carson Collins, even then I don't think that Reedy loses. But maybe closer. Those are some more competitive games. Closer. But the fact that there's so much turnover, there's so many question marks in the form of young teams. We all think Denison's going to be great, but what if they aren't? There's so much uncertainty. Reedy included, but if you're going to have this amount of turnover and you're going to have to break in these many new pieces and kind of retool a little bit, this is the year that you want to do it, and you can't really argue that Reedy isn't probably the best equipped team in the district to do it. So when you combine all the factors, like you said, he can say they're overrated. But just looking at the texture of this district and kind of the tradition that Reedy's building, that goes a long way too. You win 13 games, you expect to come back and win 13 games or more. Like it's part of it. The younger guys, it's easier to buy in. When you're going 4 rounds deep in the playoffs. So just looking up and down the district, I don't know. Could be some fun ones potentially, but just with the makeup of 7-5A. D2, I think Reedy is easily the far and away the best team again. Truly
amazing that in the 3rd year of a varsity program, you're in the 4th round giving Aledo a run for their money. They only lost that game by 10 points to Aledo, which was by far the closest any other team in the playoffs came to beating them. But you mentioned tradition. They have that winning tradition. They only have 6 returning starters, but the guys they have back and that tradition built around the program is so immense. And one guy to keep an eye on this year, they lose Michael Ferreira at running back. He was a smaller kind of, you could rely on him, but he wasn't really going to take it any given run 50 yards to the house. They have a guy this year in Jacob Smith. He's only a sophomore, but they are really, really, really excited about him this year. He has that home run threat. So maybe, they lose some guys on that offensive line, but they have a more explosive rushing attack this time around. If only they were in, you mentioned how, their schedule might be a little easier being in Division II versus a team like a Lone Star or some of the other Frisco schools in Division I. They're not facing, Lone Star, Wakeland, or Little Elm, or, whoever you want to pick in district play, or the Colony, but they're going to play them in week 2. And last year, that game was a doozy. I know that's on my games to watch. I'm sure that's on your radar as well. Let's get into games to watch. Reedy, the Colony, non-district, week 2. We're going to see what those 2 teams are made of.
It's one of those scenarios. I mean, it's like Allen. You know what I mean? When you look at Allen's schedule, you don't look at 9-6A.
No.
Even you look at like, oh, they got Cedar Hill, or you know what I mean. They look at that kind of early season test, and it's the same thing like you said for Reedy with the Colony. I mean, the Colony is going to be good. You know, the Colony brings back a ton. I'm expecting the Colony to be really, really good. And if Reedy goes out and beats the Colony this year by 18 points, 21 points, then you for sure know that, okay, well, Reedy's fine. You know what I mean? But if it's another barn burner and it's another game that's, you know, one score or less and the Colony's hanging around, then maybe Reedy's not invincible, you know, and maybe they're not the same caliber of just totally dominant. But yeah, I think it's just a good early measuring stick and probably better than any test they'll see within their own league for sure.
Think about it if it goes the other way. If the Colony, you know, blows them out. Then you're kind of hitting the panic button at Reedy only in week 2, because then you start district right then and there, you know, with the 19 districts. So could be an interesting, will be an interesting you know, test to start the year between those two schools. I expect the Colony to be a lot better, even better than they were last year. It's a shame they won't play Lone Star. I'm assuming Lake Dallas and Lovejoy is on your radar?
Yep. Lake Dallas and Lovejoy is October 25th. So kind of late in the season. You know, by then I would think that, you know, Lake Dallas has Frisco October 11th. You know, and some other schools a little sooner than they get Lovejoy. So I would think that by then Lake Dallas might have somewhat of an idea of where they stand as far as trying to make the postseason. Like I said, that Frisco game October 11th is going to be huge. I think the winner of that one takes a big step forward in trying to lock up one of those lower playoff seeds. But yeah, Lovejoy and Lake Dallas was weird last year. Remember, it was Lovejoy got out to like 28-0 lead,
that's right.
And then it was like 31. I don't know, something at one point, and then in the second half, Lovejoy like didn't score another point, and the final score was within a score, and Lake Dallas had it at like the 18 with a chance to win that football game. So really strange, kind of maybe a little budding. I don't know if I want to call it a rivalry, but you know, it's fun when stuff like that happens and games are that close, and you know, I think these two programs are both pretty proud programs that consider themselves contenders pretty much year in, year out. So, you know, it'd be fun to see that one again. Lake Dallas gets them, you know, at home, which is, you know, a big deal. I think it was Lovejoy's homecoming last year even. So, you know, cool atmosphere for Lovejoy, kind of going to be the opposite maybe for Lake Dallas. But, yeah, we'll see. I think that game will be make or break. Maybe not for Lovejoy, just depending on how things shake out, but definitely for Lake Dallas. You know, if they beat Frisco, if they beat, you know, some other teams and are coming in with an opportunity to really kind of establish themselves, taking down Lovejoy would be, I don't want to say the final, you know, nail in the coffin of making the playoffs, but certainly would go a long way. So, yeah, it's one to watch for sure.
Lovejoy and Lake Dallas, they have really unique stadiums in the fact, obviously, they're one school towns, and you know, they have people come out there. I remember when the one time I've covered a game at Lovejoy, it was against Wakeland. The time I saw Bumper Pool, you know, they had people tailgating, you had people barbecuing, you had, you know, everyone out in that Lucas Allen area.
Too, which is
it's right behind the school.
Because not all, you know, not every school has the luxury. I mean, you look at the Frisco schools. You know, you have to travel to every game. I mean, they're in Frisco, but you don't have like you don't have a home.
No.
And it's a big deal, you know, for Lake Dallas. New turf this year. I mean, it's the little things, like, you know what I mean? Like, this is our place, you know, they take care of us. This is our town. You have to come out here literally to our campus. I mean, it's a factor for sure.
It's interesting that you brought up the Frisco schools, because they don't have that. You know, they have 3 different stadiums. They don't have that. All right, this is our house. I mean, you could think maybe the Star or whatever's that marquee venue.
Well, sure, for Frisco.
But there's no. If you played at the Star before, there's really no intimidation factor. There's no, you know, oh my gosh, this home crowd is nuts. So, you know, because there's 10 schools in Frisco.
Right.
But one game to watch on my radar for sure that will be at the Star. You know, that was a doozy last year that I brought it up just a while ago. Memorial Lebanon Trail.
Yeah.
You know, it was Memorial's only win a year ago. It was a 1-score game. I don't have, my internet kind of jumped out on me, but it's in mid-October, and last year that was a barn burner. It was like 45-38 or something like that. Went down to the wire, and with both teams, you know, with seniors now, with bigger, stronger, should be improved. That will be very interesting. And Coach Roberson at Memorial said, hey, that might be the most interesting rivalry right now in Frisco.
Yeah.
If you think about it, on the football field, two up-and-coming teams, like there's not really a better rivalry. I mean, you can dive into some other sports, but if we're talking strictly football, this is it right now.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens between those two second-year programs now.
Yeah.
And Coach Cole, he told me an interesting quote about those two teams. He said, he said it bluntly, there's no more first-year teams in this district. It's going to be a tight dogfight. And like I said, book it. One of those two teams is going to win more than just that game against each other.
I guess maybe the other two for me before we move into maybe who we'll think will make the postseason. Lovejoy and Reedy, October 10th, obviously going to be a big one. De facto, quote unquote,
that's
district
at
championship.
Lovejoy, right?
Nope, it's at Reedy this year, I believe. But in any case, maybe you want to call it a district championship game. I expect Reedy to take that one. But a good measuring stick for Lovejoy. A good way to see kind of where they're at with Rucker and with kind of this transition that they're undergoing. It's a rather early, I guess, not super early, early October, but you still got lots of action behind them. So even if you lose that game to Reedy, I think it's about how you lose. In that case, when you take a team like Reedy, especially if they're as good and dominant as they're predicted to be, again, if Lovejoy, that's a 2-score game or something, then
because last year it wasn't.
Exactly, last year it was ugly. So if you get a 2-score game, then you get some good feelings going into the back half of district play and feeling like you're competitive and feeling like you can hang with anybody. So that'll be a big one. And then late in district play, November 1st, Denison at Lovejoy.
I was about to say Denison.
I think that's going to be. You want to talk about like late season district games that can really kind of shuffle postseason positions. I mean, if Denison and Lovejoy are both there fighting for that number 2 spot, it could come down to the winner of that game. And I think that's
November 1st.
Yeah,
I mean, it's the weather could be tricky.
Second to last week. So yeah, that'll be a good one to watch as far as just another measuring stick. How good is Denison? Has Denison kind of jumped up really with those? The programs kind of in the upper echelon of this district. And like I said, it could be for the number 2 seed. You never know. So speaking of seeding, Frisco Reedy's number 1. We can agree there.
I don't think Reedy's going to make the playoffs. No, I'm just kidding. You have your Reedy green on right now. Obviously, Reedy number 1.
Yeah.
I'm really intrigued with what Denison will do, what they have. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Reedy 1, Denison 2, Lovejoy 3, Frisco 4, Lake Dallas 5. I don't think Braswell's there yet.
Yeah.
6, and then flip a coin.
Yeah.
I forgot about Princeton. I think Memorial 7, Princeton 8, Lebanon Trail 9. I think Memorial beats Princeton.
I can get behind that, I think. Just kind of focusing on, I think the bottom 2 are probably still going to be the Frisco schools. Just to start there, I'll trust you that Memorial may be the better team. I'll go with them 8, Lebanon Trail 9. I think Princeton's right above them. Like I said, competitive year for Princeton. I think they're going to be fine, but they're not going to be, I don't think, threatening a playoff spot. Or maybe they will, but I don't really see it. And then going back to the top, Reedy, clearly, you just have to give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't think anybody's going to be able to knock them off. I think Lovejoy, just kind of as a product of the momentum they've built and kind of the good vibes they have going around there. Obviously, like I said, they got knocked out of the playoffs pretty early last year, but no shame in that.
Yeah.
So I think Lovejoy will probably take that number 2 seed. I think they're more likely to beat all the teams they need to beat, if that makes sense, than maybe Denison is. Denison's young. Maybe somebody sneaks up on them that shouldn't. And even if they beat Lovejoy, sometimes that's not enough. If Lovejoy takes care of Frisco, Lake Dallas, Princeton, both other, the smaller Frisco school, you know what I mean? So it's I think Lovejoy has enough consistency and enough kind of momentum to take that number 2 seed. Man, I guess I'll take Denison 3. That one's tough too, because you want to put your trust in Price and some of the other young talent and how good they can be.
But it's tough with these teams we've only seen once.
Yeah,
too,
and it could all implode just as easily. I guess my HSO, my hot sports opinion would be that I don't know if Frisco's going to be back. I don't know, because last year you mentioned they beat Lake Dallas and Lovejoy last year. No small task, and I don't
those
see.
Those two teams were really good last year.
Yeah, and I don't see a whole lot of difference in those programs necessarily this season as far as talent. And it's tough to play against Frisco. It's tough to play against the Wing T, but one more year of experience doing that. So, like I said, if Frisco's steady as she goes, and they could very easily be a playoff team again. But I do think maybe they overachieved a little bit last year.
No doubt.
So there could be some coming back to the pack a little bit, and Lake Dallas even could sneak into that number 4 spot. Braswell could sneak into that number 4 spot. I don't know. I've seen Engel. That guy's a stud athlete. And Lake Dallas, I think, if they can plug in the holes around him, as I mentioned, he has the ability to be good enough to just win some football games. So I'll tentatively say Lake Dallas maybe picks up the number 4 seed, Frisco number 5, Braswell, and then all the way down.
Yeah, I was about to say a lot will, lie on Engel's shoulders.
Yeah.
Because if he's maybe not that quarterback that they were hoping he would be, then they could slip to a 6.
Right.
If he is everything and more, and just that MVP
and
type
find
candidate,
some people to throw the football to.
There you go. Just getting 300 total yards a game type of deal, and just out athleting everyone. They could climb as high as 3.
Yeah.
That should be an interesting thing to keep an eye on. But yeah, a lot on Engel's shoulders. No pressure, Engel.
I think the only 2 things I'm sure of are that Reedy's probably going to win the district, and that Lovejoy is a playoff team. We'll put it that way. Not even a number 2 seed, but just Lovejoy is a postseason team.
I think Frisco, they overachieved last year. Yeah, they have question marks on the offensive line, but I think they're better than they were last year.
Could be.
And I think since Lovejoy and Lake Dallas regressed, I think Frisco is in, but then other teams have gotten better too.
Yep.
Denton, Braswell, even the 2.
Braswell could jump up. We don't.
Yeah.
We don't follow them as closely as we do some of these other teams. For all we know, Braswell could jump up and be the 3 seed.
This is their 3rd or 4th year with the varsity program.
I don't
One of those
exactly.
2. So,
but they bring back 14 starters.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that they. I mean, they have continuity. So, man, who knows?
We're gonna write our predictions down.
We have
after this, because I'm gonna forget if I don't write it down, and then we'll look back. End of October, early November, and just see how super wrong we were on all of this. Should be making for some funny laughs there and at the end of the year. But that'll just about wrap up our lukewarm takes in Class 5A. Next week,
big boys next week.
Oh yeah, we'll dive into all the 6As, which
I think it's 10 and 11 6A on Monday and 9 6A on Thursday.
Yeah, 9 6A gets its own big daddy podcast to round things out for the previews, the gridiron previews heading into the season. But for Taylor Raglin, I'm Bryan Murphy. We will see y'all next week when we preview 6A.